Welcome to another episode of the Dentology Podcast, where we discuss the business of dentistry. In this podcast series, we'll be discussing all the non-clinical aspects of dentistry, from goodwill values, finance, marketing, how to buy and sell a dental practice, mindset, through to where you can invest your money in team management issues. My name is Andy Acton, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens. Let's jump straight into it.
Well, another terrific conversation, this time with Manhar Segal.
Fascinating. People will love the chronology of how he got from, where he started to owning a practice and then realising it. There's some real sort of gems and nuggets in there.
And the fact that he was able to do that with his wife, who he met at dental school, and worked through that journey together. And he kept going back to kind of teamwork we did together. It was a real partnership in every sense of the word. And
to remain together, it must be quite hard to live, work, be totally immersed in a practice setup, which is stressful enough in itself. But also, it was a fascinating talk.
But also to have that full autopsy on selling a dental practice, and that only happened in the last few months. I think for anybody who's looking to sell their practice in the future, they'll take a huge amount from what it looked and felt like for him, because people are going to go through that, and he's trodden that path.
And he was honest, warts and all.
Exactly. It wasn't just all kind of sweetness and light.
Yeah,
it was
roses.
The real reality of what it was like to sell a practice. No, cracking episode.
Invaluable.
Cracking episode. So hello and welcome to our latest episode of Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. And today we are joined by Manhar Segal. And Manhar is a guys graduate from 1996, where he also graduated with Aradhna, his wife of now 25 years, and they studied and qualified together, which is lovely. Recently become the ex-principal of Millenium Dentistry in Staffordshire, and we're going to talk about that story and how that came about and what that experience was like for you. He's a well-known car enthusiast and a family man. We first properly connected through a Frank Taylor and Associates event at the Greypool Ferrari dealer back in 2020, and as a petrol head, that seemed a fairly obvious place to meet you. So welcome, Manhar. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, thanks, Andy. Not doing too bad. Yes, I vividly remember the event back in February 2020, before the world came falling down with COVID, etc.
Just before.
But yes, I vividly remember. I think it was Friday 28th. We went up there. I went up there, met you guys. Drooled over all the stock in the showroom. I was like a kid in a sweet shop. Strict instructions with my wife: you're not taking your wallet with you. And I had a time of my life, and that's when, like you said, we all connected. All three of us connected together, and that's where it all evolved from. That was the center point, the focus. That yes, we had the petrol head theme in common, but then you had a service which I at the time needed assistance in. So yeah, it was great. I remember it well, but otherwise doing okay. Come out the other end of COVID, still in one piece.
Super,
good.
What's interesting hearing you say that is we've obviously spent the last 2 years plus looking down cameras on Zoom, talking to people. Yeah. And for me, that was probably our last major physical event where we got to see people.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt you do strike up different sorts of relationships with people when you're physically in a space and you're chatting and you can see people and that kind of longer form conversations. It is much nicer than doing things over Zoom. And I don't know if we'd have kicked off our relationship in the same way if it had been a phone call or a Zoom call.
Yeah. I entirely agree. At that event, we were all, if you like, for want of a better phrase, disarmed. We were all in our comfort zones at that point in time. And the selection of the crowd that you had there were doing the things that they like to do as a leisure activity. And when the barriers are down, your communication is far better. And that's why when I was talking to you, things were forming in my head thinking, hang on, this is pretty good. It wasn't a sales pitch. It was a couple of guys having a conversation and me finding out about what you did. I've seen the adverts, FTA everywhere. I mean, there isn't a single dentist out there that I wouldn't know who's not heard of FTA. But I wanted, in a way, you guys humanized it for me, and that's what swung it for me. in my
That's
opinion.
good.
Oh, it's nice
That's
to
good
hear.
to hear.
Yeah, it's nice to
Because,
hear.
as you know, we're doing another one. So,
Yeah.
we expect to see you there.
Oh,
So
I
that's
shall
good.
certainly be there. I'll probably be there before everybody else is there, but and I'll probably be the last one to leave. You'll have to kick me out, or the showroom will have to kick me out.
Yeah, well, we have to decide whether you take your wallet this time or not.
Oh, she'll probably confiscate it off me.
So
It's always finance. It's always car finance. You're fine.
Actually, remember my license.
So let's take you back to the beginning. Before you made the decision to go to Guy's and qualify to become a dentist, what was your childhood upbringing like?
Okay, so I'm the only one. My parents, my father was in Inland Revenue. My mum was a doctor. She was a consultant at a local hospital, actually about 3 miles away from the practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kept
So
local.
a lot of my patients knew me as a child because I grew up here. So a number of,
wow.
I even treat the lady who used to cross me across the road from infant school. So it's great in that respect. But yeah, my mum was a consultant at a local hospital. I was born in Bromsgrove, Worcestershire. We moved up to Stoke when I was 4. So my whole life has been here for as far back as I can remember. I went to school local to the practice. I lived local to the practice. I lived literally within a 3 mile radius of where we set up. And then went through work experience when it was the time to. I'd seen my mum's occupation, my dad's occupation. And the work experience really thrung it for me because of all the work experience settings I went in, the dentist who I visited, oddly enough, is like a quarter of a mile away. He had such an enthusiasm about his job, and you could see that when he was with his patients, communicating with his patients, and it was so good in that he was. You're almost a mechanic of the mouth, yet you are also an individual who's there to listen to the patients, talk to the patients, not only dentistry but everything else. And in their lives, you're a counsellor, you're so many things. So I thought, hey, this is all right. I can live with this. I'm doing something different with every individual that walks through that door. And that's what
I think what's intriguing there, Manhar, is that it was through work experience. And we've spoken to a number of different dentists who all say the same thing, that it was through work experience.
Yeah.
That's what piqued their interest in the profession.
They caught the fire of the dentist.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it? That dentist enthused you. Because if they'd have been dull and disinterested, so would you have been. And it is amazing that one person has kickstarted, as you say, quite a few guys have gone.
And it's really
good.
important because those decisions that you need to make, even more so now, in terms of your subjects that you select to get entry into dental school, happens quite early on. And I don't know the answer, but I hope that young people still have access to dental practices to get that work experience, to see if they get their fire sparked.
We've always encouraged it. We've always had work experience students with us. I think in 2010 we won an award locally for the work experience that we offered to the local schools and colleges. It was great. We weren't doing it for the award. It was for my satisfaction, because I love teaching. I've been a former vocational trainer. I've done some examining at VT, and I've always loved. I've cherished the profession, and to those kids who are interested, and I want to, draw that motivation on in them. Yes, things took a lull over COVID, but prior to that, it was great. We're getting back into the swing of things, so it's something we'd always have. Because
I'll tell you what's interesting for me is knowing that you love cars, and part of loving cars is the engineering to go with cars. I think of how they and then you described it as engineering of the mouth. There's obviously a sort of there's a theme in there, isn't it? That you like the engineering. It's fascinating.
You're not worried. You're not scared to get your hands dirty. Let me put it to that.
Yeah.
So that was really it. So the work experience came along. I got the grades to get into dental school. I will be honest with you, my first choice was not Guy's, it was my insurance offer. My first choice was Liverpool. But I didn't get there. I went into
I
Guy.
thought you were going to say Birmingham. Being a guy from the Midlands area, I thought you'd go to Birmingham.
No, I thought so too, but I had a big fascination for the big yellow submarine, if you like.
What a great reason.
And he wanted to live away from home and party.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was my Guy's was default. I'm glad I went there because I met this young lady in the first week of the first year in Freshers Week who later on was mad enough to marry me. So, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, what a sliding doors moment. We were talking to somebody else earlier about sliding doors. Imagine if your grades had been better or Liverpool had appealed. You'd signed the paperwork and gone there.
Yeah.
You know, your whole life would have been different.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm so glad that fate made things transpire. And like I said, me and Aradhna, we hit it off pretty much straight away. And then, we went through 5 years of dental school. She was always saving my back. But, otherwise, always, we got through it together. And that's the theme that we've had with our family life and practice life. We've always kind of like fused to one to get through that. Do you know what I mean?
Work together as a team.
Yeah, which is nice.
That's how it works. And that's what I've always encouraged in my staff, that, look, work as a team. You're individuals, but work together. Because that way you'll get through it.
And you met Aradhna at dental school, and I know you went to school with Shalin and Shushma.
Yeah.
And they obviously met at school and they're together. When you were there, did it feel like a special group? Did you know early on that the class you were
Couples classes?
It was. I think 10 couples got married. I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was like 10 couples got married, and it was.
This was like a dating service before dating service.
Exactly. Yeah. You didn't need Tinder back in those days. You just needed to get admission into Guys, and away you were.
And you were there.
You certainly were. So, it was great in that respect. We were a family back then, very early on, and till date, we still have reunions. We've got a Guys group. We have a close knit group of friends who we meet every year. And
Lovely.
now, bearing in mind we qualified 26 years ago this year, it's still nice that we're still meeting together every year. It was. You knew at that point in time that things were not for the short.
Did you get married after school, after dental school?
We got married
or during
after VT.
Right.
So we did our qualification, and then we went did our respective VTs. Aradhna was down in Chelmsford way. I was back up in sunny Stoke. And then I managed to con her into coming up to Stoke. And then she came up here. We were both associates for 2 years.
Right.
And then it had always been our aim to have a practice. Aradhna was the driving force behind that notion, because she comes from a business background from her father's side. And I'm so glad we did do it, because my dad at the time that we were setting up the practice was terminally ill with cancer. And he said, look, you can inherit the money that I'm going to give you to help out with once I'm dead and gone, but I'd ideally love to see it with my own eyes. So he helped fund us. My father-in-law, Aradhna's dad, gave us the business sense, the business acumen, the location and everything. And together, here we go again, teamwork, we got it established. I mean, unfortunately, my dad died 2 months after, but I'm glad he saw.
He just hung on.
He got to see the vision.
He went in peace, kind of thing. That they've set up now, so that was the way it was. So that's how we progressed to that point in time. And then beyond there, literally with a 3 surgery practice, we set it up as a squat. It was a former ladies' fashion shop, but if I were a lady back then, it's certainly a shop I wouldn't go to. In terms of fashion, left a little bit to be desired. And then we made a 3 surgery practice out of it.
Which is fabulous. And how was that in the early days? Because quite often for couples working together, it can be quite intense because you kind of come home and you say, well, what did you do today? It's like, well, you know, because we work. How did it take a while to kind of evolve and get kind of that separation between work and home so that you could genuinely have a home life and then go back to work?
Did you put boundaries in?
Yeah.
We didn't put boundaries in. Okay, to start off with, for the first 18 months that the practice was up and running, we didn't have children. So our dedication was solely to the practice. Our practice, like I said to you, and you've mentioned this in the past, was our first baby. So we had to nurture it. So we had to live, eat, breathe, talk, practice in order to get it off the ground. There were decisions we were taking like midnight. Hang on, we haven't done this, we haven't done that, we haven't ordered this. We need to get this in. And I'm not sorry for doing that. And to an extent now, like you say, things have evolved. We've got kind of boundaries in, natural form boundaries in that, right, okay, let's not talk about practice. But it's now second nature. It's in our blood to discuss it. It's very hard to set up boundaries, particularly when you're forming a business. It's in its infancy.
It's all consuming, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in its infancy. It's like a child. You help a child learn how to walk. So you can't say, well, okay, that's it. I'm done for today. We can start lessons and things tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. It carries on. But eventually you learn to progress, to let go of the discussion and debates around it.
You said that Aradhna, obviously she had some business experience from the family side for her. But between you, and what was your own motivation to want to start a squat and be a principal?
We the reason we wanted to do it was, firstly, it was going to be ours in terms of we would lay down the ethos of it. We would determine the structural and equipment arrangements of it. We'd recruit the staff who we thought would be suitable for it, and also we'd if you like establish a relationship, particularly with those patients who joined us right from the very beginning, and whose generations have joined us since. To be the way we had dreamt it would be. If we'd have gone and bought another practice, and we did look at other practices at the time to see whether they were suitable for us to buy, but invariably they were principals who were, right, I'm going to do a year here and then I'm gone kind of thing.
Yeah.
We didn't want that. And then it was a question of relationships that patients have formed, and we see this now, with the dentist from the very outset, are those crucial relationships, because therein evolves trust. Now, if I'd taken over a practice there and then for a dentist who'd been there 40 years, suddenly this new guy walks through the door. I've got to start from ground zero, and that's what we didn't want. We thought, let's start from ground zero, but do it our way. That was the way.
You're still a young guy.
50,
and you, well, I'm 50. Compared to this guy, we're a young guy. Well,
he must be 51 or something.
Oh yeah, I'm just hanging on.
So, what was your driver to sell, and did you find that a tough decision between you? Were you both completely aligned in this, or was it something that kind of got thrown around the kitchen table for quite a while?
Yeah. So, how long did it take from an idea to okay, let's do it?
We used to get the mail shoots in the post. I think this was at the time when corporates were becoming a fashion, and they were mail shooting everybody, hey, do you want to sell? And at that point, when it first came, those letters were first received, no thanks, forget it. I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to retire from here. They're going to carry me out in a wooden box from here. Was the notion at the time. But what changed our mindset was we thought we have two sides to it: a domestic situation, which we have with our daughter, and we thought, if we're going to go, we don't want to walk out into the sunset and say, that's it, we're gone. We'd rather quit whilst we were ahead, but still be there for our patients, and not just for a couple of years, for a number of years, till such time as we're either incapacitated to work or it's time for us to retire. We never wanted to abandon. So we needed a situation to arise in the future whereby this presented itself. So we decided, once we realized that our daughter's situation, her medical condition was such that it was, and she needed us, and having a practice in the equation when it comes to a will, and when you have a child who at that point will be an adult and who won't be able to take decisions for herself, is reliant on others, when you've got such a big asset thrown into the mix, to remove that would help.
Very responsible thinking, yeah.
It's for the greater good. The one thing we've always taught ourselves was to plan ahead, and literally quit whilst you're ahead. Quitting doesn't mean to say, I'm leaving.
Taking your daughter to one side, do you think your thinking and feeling about the practice and being around for a number of years would have been different if you'd have bought a practice as opposed to started a practice from squat? Did it feel more like a baby because it was built from the ground up, as opposed to you bought somebody else's practice?
I think it, for me, my heartstrings wouldn't have been so pulled had I acquired a practice. This I see this has been my second home. And for my wife, it's been her second home, because I can sit in this office and remember nailing things to the wall. And that's when you do that.
We remember that, don't you? Get your paintbrush out.
Yeah, exactly. Lord knows I did
almost
try.
Sweaters in the wall.
Yeah, I did try, but then they called in professional people. But when you have this sort of attachment, when you remember seeing the building as bare bones, not even central heating, it just brick walls, that's when you grow that attachment. And I don't think I would have had that had I acquired.
No, I think probably not.
Yeah, I think it is. I think
because you can change something into something else, but when you start something and create something, it's very different, isn't it?
And I think a lot of it's about vision, isn't it?
It's about vision, and it's about starting with a blank canvas.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
definitely.
So jumping to the end, you made the decision to sell.
Yeah.
Lots of people who listen to this podcast are practice owners, and they're going to go through what you've been through someday. So we've kind of talked about the decision-making process up to the point where you decided to sell. But what kind of happened from there on? Because obviously you then ultimately sold your practice through Frank Taylor & Associates.
Yeah.
But what kind of happened before then and then working with Frank Taylor & Associates?
So once we decided that this is the way forwards, we met with Mr. Google and tapped away.
It's a good start point.
Nowadays, yeah. I mean, there were the recurring adverts from different companies in the BDJ and Dentistry magazine and what have you. But we went on the internet as well. So we went with an agent first. I don't know if I can mention names or not.
No.
Let's remain.
An agent.
An agent who dealt with medical practices, medical, I mean pharmacies, dental, opticians and stuff like that. But they also had a commercial arm, so it was news agents, pubs, this, that, and the other.
Right.
So we went with them, photos and everything done. And we did have an initial flurry of people running through, and it was like, my God, all these people, what's happening here? This is too quick. What's happening? But with each one of them, they either weren't for us or we weren't for them. And then I think, I might be wrong here, but I think 4 or 6 months down the line, the agent really lost interest. It's like, okay, drop your price. And that's it. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I'm not selling a second-hand car here or a bit of furniture. This is my livelihood, my legacy. So Let me see. So we then went to another agent. No joy there. The one further agent after that, with whom I shared the offer that a certain corporate had made for the practice, if you remember.
Yeah.
And as you quite rightly pointed out, it was less than half of what I've got through Frank Taylor. And had I gone under that particular agent's influence, which was, this is the best offer going, it's great, they'll do this, they'll do that, they'll do the other, you're safe here, it's a no-brainer, go and sell. And I thought to myself, you know what? There's a difference between an agent who wants to sell with your best interest at heart and an agent who wants a quick buck from a commission.
But sometimes it's hard, isn't it? When it's you only go through this process
Who's a
once.
broker? Who's an agent?
Yeah, you really have to trust the person on the other side of the table because, like you say, for you, this was your squat. This was your one chance to sell and get out for the best price possible.
Yeah.
So you've no reference point. You've no way of knowing whether that's right or not.
But this was just it. And the vibes I was getting was this, okay, hurry, close the deal, hurry it on, move it on. And that's when I thought, I'm being sold a car here. Leave a deposit today, it won't be sold tomorrow. I thought, you know what? I'm going to think about it. Then an hour later, I said, I've thought about it. Thank you so much. I'm moving on. Bye. And we just progressed on. Then, of course, Grey Paul happened.
Yes.
And that's when I was, having had a taste of 3 agents, I thought, oh God, well, let's go along and see what happens.
Well, the danger is they're all the same mentality.
But there is that danger. But they wouldn't be all the same if there weren't the sales figures to back them up. If they were all the same, they'd all have the same sales figures. But if I compare FTA to the other agents, you dwarf them. So that's what swung it for me. But this whole disarmed meeting that we had, and particularly meeting both of you, was really important. But then thereafter, the conversations we had in terms of value, what fascinated me was the knowledge that you possessed of the market. That was important to me. The knowledge you possessed, the potential changes that were going to occur in the market. Nobody saw COVID coming, but the potential changes, it was the foresight that you had, and the valuations you came up with to me were to the nearest penny. Now you can't even buy things in a shop to the nearest penny. I mean, an article of clothing, but you the way you totted it up and the breakdown of how you'd worked it out really made sense to me.
Oh,
and that to me, that was the main driver. These guys know what they're talking about. They've got the sales figures to prove what they're talking about. The commission is the commission is the commission. It has to be. But if it's going to get me what I want financially and in terms of the buyer that I want, then why am I even debating the issue? Why am I even thinking about it? And that was what really spurred me on.
Yeah,
that's good. It's nice to hear. It's always something that we find quite strange, that people who, that someone, trying to make you sell a practice on the cheap. And we always say, well, there's probably a little bit of a conflict going on there because there's probably some money being paid direct to them, which is why they want you to sell it cheap. And it's this whole thing about being, for us, we look at it and say, this business has been running 34 years. And we said, reputations take 34 years to build, but you can lose them in minutes. And it's not worth it trying to make a fast buck because hopefully people will see the authenticity and integrity of what we do.
Yeah.
Because the honest answer is we don't get paid until it's done.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no point wasting our time. We're going to value that at £12 million.
Yeah.
Oh, it's remained unsold.
Yeah,
There's
why.
But also,
Yeah.
I think it's appreciating how important this is. This is your legacy. This is your professional life's work.
Yeah.
It's emotional.
There's a duty of care to achieve the very best price possible. And I know, numbers are only one way of keeping score. But when you're selling an asset and that becomes kind of, part of your estate for your kids, it is important to get the very best price possible.
It's not a house.
No, exactly.
It's not a house.
It's not a house. It's not a second-hand motor. You're going to kick the tyres around and say, well, knock a bit off that for that.
Well, it's a bit like you were saying, Manhar, isn't it? That you've treated probably a couple of generations of the same family. Yeah. So there's a legacy that you're also leaving behind.
And that's the legacy that has to carry on longer. I'd want it to carry on long after I've gone. And the practice ethos is also important to me.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
That level of customer care with a family touch is important to me. And that's why I wanted the buyer who I've gone with, he can carry that on. I mean, I'm so lucky that, since the introduction to the buyer, crikey, we're like the best of mates. We meet each other regularly, not only in the surgery setting, outside the surgery setting. It's a blast. We're sending each other videos of cars and things like that. And we can have a conversation on a phone for like an hour, of which 5 minutes is probably about the practice. The rest is just, that common.
Which is brilliant, isn't it? That is brilliant.
And that's why this is the biggest thing I'll thank Frank Taylor Associates for, is that they got me that buyer. The buyer who I can see carrying on our legacy and the ethos of the practice and the reputation of the practice.
Which is lovely.
And I needed someone who wanted both of us for a while. It's not my age to go looking for a job. I'm not in a position to retire. And even if I were in a position to retire, I'd probably still come into work anyway. So to me, this was important. So the way you've guided us through this, the individual who eventually, the buyer you got for us, and then, Liz, constant emails to say, where are we with my solicitor, myself, the buyer solicitor, that was great.
And that process, you've only been through this once, and other people will be following down the path that you've already trodden. How was it hard? Was it frustrating? Was it longer than you thought? Because the reality is, we need to be honest. We need to be honest about what's involved, because people are going to go through this, and there are people that will say it's easy and you can do it in 3 months, and we know that's not the truth, and you've been through that process. Yeah. So how did you find that?
I found I was expecting a long haul. Not a short haul, because it was an asset, business asset and freehold sale. So, it was going to take a while to do. The biggest thing I learned was the preparation for the sale. So the checklist that you sent us was invaluable. The timings, the chronological order of which you should have this ready by then, this ready by then, this ready by then, was invaluable. And yet you are relying on so many third parties to supply you with that information. And often the wait from them can be quite demoralizing. It can get you down. But I think if provided you're focused on the end goal, there are distractions, there are disappointments along the way. But if you can see yourself at the end, it's going to happen. It did take a little longer than anticipated. And even, the buyer, his end, there were complications and things along the way, but it happens. I never expected this whole 3-month scenario. I mean, it's impossible. To my eyes, you can't even buy a house in 3 months, let alone a business.
No.
And everything had to be right as well. And one thing that everything had to be was honest and upfront. That was critical. having a good solicitor on board, and I can't recommend more that any individual who's out there thinking of selling uses a specialist dental solicitor. You know, it's like almost like a foreign language, dentistry.
Makes sense.
And the runnings, the ins and outs of the business. So that is crucial. And from the outset, we used a guy who you knew of, I knew of. In fact, the freehold was from solicitor was from the same firm. In fact, that particular lady has been friends with Aradhna since she was 11, so they knew each other. And you know, it was a long, drawn-out process. The legals do what they do best. But you know, we jumped through all the hoops and we got there in the end. So yes, it was a drawn-out process. It was at times demoralising, but provided you don't take your eyes off the prize, and retain your focus, it's a bit like going through dental school. Provided you retain your focus, you're there.
Yeah, brilliant. And you kept your eye on the business as well. You kept running the business through the process, which is important.
I didn't change. I didn't stop things. You know, I was changing equipment. I was buying new X-ray equipment. I was, you know, doing so many things. I carried on, and I said to yourself, I have to keep this practice on track. It has to keep evolving until such time as there is completion. I have to be there doing it. And there's one assurance I made to the buyer that, look, everything's not going to come to a grinding halt. I still have to get equipment tested, the necessary safety check, safety certification, equipment replacement that's needed till such time as they take over. That's very important.
It is. Run it until the money's in your account.
Exactly.
Really, is the advice we give people.
Oh, thank you for sharing that experience.
That's brilliant.
That's really good to hear. And like I said, I like the honesty of it, because people that are coming down the path behind you, it's nice for them to know what that looks like. Yeah. In terms of you as a personality, you strike me as a very measured, kind soul. Yet you flip that coin over, and you're absolutely crazy about fast cars. Yeah. Is that kind of the yin to the yang? Is a measured, kind soul, you flip it over, and then you like the crazy cars?
The crazy cars are my outlet. You know, there are many other vices you could have in this life. You just need a way of funding the vices. Now, the car, it's an outlet, but I also appreciate, as I do in dentistry, the evolution of technology since I qualified. It's the same with the motoring world for me. The way that's evolved, and it blows my mind in dentistry how things have changed, and it's the same thing with cars. But it's literally my kid in a sweet shop routine, for want of a better expression. That's a car scene for me. I mean, and that's the one problem myself and the new principal have, is that our nurses tend to be prizing us apart from each other in surgery, because that's all we discuss. Poor patients are waiting in the waiting room, and she's trying to prize us apart, but somehow we still manage to send each other in each surgery YouTube videos of what we've seen. So I'm happy to say the guy who's actually taken over is just as bad as me, if not worse.
Yeah, good.
Pleased to hear it. And you're still young. You're 50. Yeah. What is the next chapter for you? Is there a blank page, or you're going to continue working in the practice with Aradhna? But do you have plans for the future yet, or are you just going to enjoy some time?
You're always planning. You're always planning. You alter your plans. Yeah, you can always change things on the canvas fractionally, but you're always planning. So I think the plan for us is to retain our dentistry, because that's what we were trained to do, and we couldn't imagine a lifetime without it. But move further into now generating more passive income in terms of property and things like that, which is something that we could never dedicate our time to do. One thing that was a driver for me to sell the practice also was that, because of our domestic challenges, we were not able to offer the future of the practice that it deserved. So that's one of the other reasons why we sold. So also with our futures, I think property management and things like that would be the way for us to go, because we do have a bit of a business head because we didn't go bankrupt. So we do have a bit of a business head, but we just want to explore the property aspect.
I think you've been very modest, Manhar. Very, very few people start up squats and run it to the extent that you did for that amount of time.
Luckily, my wife has a good head for this because it's something. Oh yes, she.
We need to do another episode with your wife.
You need to actually. You'll get more out of her. But what she inherited from her father in terms of his business acumen for property, because that's primarily what he dealt with. We're going to explore that and see how we progress from there.
Excellent.
Well, I think you've told a beautiful story. I think the start was great, and I think to hear that you've got to that end and you've sold and you've got plans for your future, it's terrific.
I really appreciate it. Really but I can't thank you guys enough for holding our hands and guiding us through the process. Because otherwise, I can assure you, there are plenty of sharks out there who would have eaten us up alive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so
that's nice to hear.
Like I say, we're delighted that you got a good end result.
Oh, definitely.
We always wrap up in the same way.
Yeah.
We always ask our guests the same two questions just to bookend things. And the first one is, if you could be the fly on a wall in a certain situation with someone, and who would be there? What would that situation look like?
I'd say it would be Enzo Ferrari.
Oh, you see, in my head, I thought you'd go for Enzo.
Yeah, Enzo Ferrari. Any day of the week. Any day of the week.
Yeah, and would he be the person you'd like to meet and sit down and have dinner with as well?
Yes, it would, because he turned his hobby, from what I've read, into a global phenomenon. The guy, from what I read, loved racing cars. He built racing cars and everything, but he needed a way to fund the racing car habit that he had. So he thought to himself, how do I do it? And then he started building road-going cars, and they were selling out like hotcakes. And I thought to myself, and he thought, this is great. This will feed my habit. To hell with the road cars. I'm focusing on the racing cars. And that's how Ferrari came about. And that's what really fascinated me about him. And he's a guy I'd love to discuss, have a sit-down meal and say, look, you've evolved it into a phenomenon, but it was your hobby. It was a passion that you had. How did you do it?
I think that's the thing. I think it's driven by passion. And I think most things that are phenomenal are driven by the passion of the founder who was doing it not to grow a big business, not to make money. It was just because they were passionate about their thing. And what falls out of that is an amazing business, and it makes money. But that was never the end game. The point was, I'm just passionate about something and I want to do the best I can.
Yeah, exactly. You want to do, if you don't forget that one ethos that you want to do the best for your customer, you can't go far wrong. You really can't. And if it eats you up that, I want to do this, I want to do a little bit this, a little bit that, your passion then seeps through to your patient.
Yeah, it has to.
And then they think, hang on, this guy really, really likes what they're doing. I'll stick with them. At least that's the theory.
I think that's a lovely point to finish on, Manhar.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
We appreciate your time. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Not at all.
Like I say, thank you for telling your story so well. And we'll look forward to catching up with you very soon.
Yeah,
I'm certainly looking forward to it. And yes, the next future dental shows, get my name badge ready.
Excellent. Will do. Cheers, Manhar. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you. Pleasure meeting. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.